I never thought I'd be sitting here telling this story, because if you'd asked me a year ago who Jessica was to me, I'd have said my sister, not by blood, but in every way that mattered. She was the one I called when my car broke down at 2 a.m., the one who stood beside me in my wedding dress, the one I trusted more than anyone. So when the betrayal came, it wasn't from some stranger or enemy, it was from her, my best friend. And it wasn't just any betrayal. She crossed the one line I swore nobody ever would. She went after my husband. It started small, so small I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. A glance that lingered too long, a late-night text that didn't feel right, a laugh that wasn't meant for me. But little by little, those cracks turned into earthquakes. And one night, in a restaurant full of people, I decided I wasn't going to be the quiet wolf anymore. I flipped the script. I think to really understand why what Jessica did cut so deep, you've got to understand who she was to me before all this. Because people don't just become villains overnight. They're not cartoon characters twirling mustaches. Most of the time, they're the people you trusted the most, the ones you bet your life on. And that's what makes the knife hurt when it finally lands. Jessica and I met in college. Freshman year, orientation week, when everything felt overwhelming and I was just a wide-eyed girl trying to figure out where the dining hall even was. She was sitting cross-legged on the grass with a Diet Coke, laughing at something a guy said. And when I walked past, she called out, "Hey, you look lost. Wanna sit?" That was Jessica. Bold, magnetic, the kind of girl people orbit around. And me, I was quieter, steadier. I didn't walk into rooms and grab attention the way she did, but I was the one who remembered your birthday, the one who showed up with soup when you were sick. We balanced each other. She pulled me into adventures. I grounded her when things spun out. For years it worked. She was there for every big moment of my 20s. When I landed my first job, she showed up with a bottle of cheap champagne and plastic cups. When I dumped my high school boyfriend, she was the one who climbed into my bed with snacks and made me laugh until my stomach hurt. When my dad had a heart scare, she drove 3 hours just to sit with me in the waiting room. That's who she was, my person. So when I met Daniel, of course she was part of it. She met him before half my family did. The first time she shook his hand, she winked at me like, "Yeah, he's a good one." She teased me endlessly about how smitten I looked. And when he proposed, she cried harder than anyone, real, messy sobs, while she hugged me and said, "You deserve this. You deserve everything." And on my wedding day, she was the one who zipped me into my dress. I can still hear her voice behind me, whispering, "Don't freak out, okay? Just breathe. You're beautiful." She handed me tissues, fixed my veil, made me laugh when I thought I'd faint. When I walked down the aisle, she mouthed, "I love you." If you'd told me then that one day I'd see her as the woman trying to wedge herself into my marriage, I would have laughed in your face. Impossible. The truth is, I admired her. I envied her sometimes too. She had this energy that made people want to be around her. She was always the loudest laugh in the room, the girl who'd dance on a table at 2 a.m., the one who could turn a boring Tuesday into a story you'd retell for years. And maybe that's why I missed the signs at first, or maybe that's why I ignored them. Because I didn't want to believe that my best friend, the woman who'd held my hair back after too many tequila shots, the woman who'd helped me pick out curtains for my first apartment, would ever betray me. It's easier to tell yourself little lies. She's just playful. She doesn't mean anything by it. She loves me too much to ever cross that line. I told myself those lies for longer than I'd like to admit. There was this one night, before things got obvious, when I remember sitting with Daniel and Jessica at a little Mexican place we used to go to. Tacos, margaritas, the works. Jessica was in the middle of some wild story about her job, waving her hands around, making the table laugh. Daniel leaned in to say something, and for half a second, I caught it. The way her eyes lingered on him, the little pause before she smiled. and way my stomach clenched in response. It was nothing, a flicker, gone in a blink, but it stuck with me. I remember lying in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, telling myself, don't be paranoid, don't ruin a perfectly good friendship over one weird look, so I buried it. And here's the part that makes me sick now. She knew. I think she knew I wouldn't say anything. Because Jessica was smart, manipulative smart, in a way I didn't recognize back then. She understood people. She knew how to push, how to charm, how to flirt just enough to make herself feel powerful, without giving anyone enough to call her out. She used that skill everywhere, at work, in our friend group, even with my parents. Everyone adored her. She'd walk into a room and instantly be the favorite. I can't tell you how many times I heard, "Oh, Jessica's just the best, isn't she?" And yeah, she was, until she wasn't. Looking back, I can see the cracks. Little moments that seemed harmless then but read like flashing red lights now. The time she joked, "If Daniel ever messes up, I'll swoop right in." The time she tagged him in some flirty meme on Instagram and said, "This is so you." The time she called him her second husband when we were all out drinking. Everyone laughed, including me, because who takes that seriously? I should have. The betrayal didn't happen in one big explosion. It happened drip by drip, like water eroding stone. A look here, a comment there, a text that made my skin prickle. And me, the woman who prides herself on being strong, on having boundaries, on not taking crap from anyone, I let it slide. Because it was Jessica. And that's the cruelest part. If it had been anyone else, I would have shut it down immediately. But when it's your best friend, you doubt yourself before you doubt them. You start asking, am I overreacting? Instead of, is she crossing a line? You start twisting yourself into knots to preserve a friendship that the other person is already tearing apart. So, yeah, before you judge me for not catching it sooner, for not standing up the very first time her hand lingered too long on my husband's arm, remember this, she wasn't just some friend, she was family. And the cruelest betrayals always come dressed like family. The first undeniable moment came on a Wednesday night. Funny how I remember the day, like it's etched into my brain. Daniel had stayed late at work, and I was curled up on the couch with some takeout, half watching Grey's Anatomy reruns. My phone buzzed. I picked it up, expecting maybe a message from him, but it wasn't Daniel. It was Jessica. Not unusual. We texted all the time. But this message wasn't meant for me. It said, "Stop making me laugh. You're gonna get me in trouble." Followed by a winky face. At first, my brain froze. I stared at the screen like maybe I was misreading it. Maybe she meant it for a coworker, or some guy she was seeing. I waited for the, "oops, wrong person" follow-up, but it never came. And then I realized, she hadn't sent it to me at all. She'd sent it to Daniel. That was the moment the ground shifted under me. I didn't storm into a rage. I didn't hurl my phone across the room. I just sat there, my heart pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. My hand was shaking as I scrolled up through their chat. Now, before you ask, no, I hadn't been snooping before. I trusted them both. But after that message, I looked. And what I found, it wasn't explicit, but it wasn't innocent either. Little jokes, late-night memes, random compliments, stuff that had no business living in a private text thread between my best friend and my husband. One of her texts read, "You're too good to her, you know that. If I were her, I'd treat you like a king." I stopped breathing. That night, when Daniel finally came home, I didn't confront him immediately. I watched him walk through the door, tired, loosen his tie, kiss my forehead like always, and I thought, does he even realize? Does he see what she's doing? Or is he enjoying it? I carried that question like a stone in my chest. The next time I saw Jessica, I tried to test her. We were sitting at brunch, mimosas sweating in their glasses, and I casually mentioned Daniel working late. I said it like bait, watching her face. "Oh, I know," she said, without missing a beat. "You know." She caught herself too late, smiled, covered. "I mean, you always say he works so hard." But my gut tightened, because that wasn't what she'd meant. From then on, I noticed everything. The way she always angled herself to sit next to him at group dinners, the way she'd touch his arm when she laughed, the way her texts popped up at midnight with little thinking of you messages. I felt like I was losing my mind. You ever been gaslit without anyone even saying a word? That's what it felt like. She never outright admitted it. Daniel never acted like anything was happening. So I started thinking maybe I was crazy. Maybe I was just insecure. But then there was the night that erased all doubt. We were all out at a bar for a friend's birthday. Music pumping, drinks flowing, everyone dancing. I'd gone to the bathroom, and when I came back, I froze in the doorway. There was Jessica, leaning across the table, her hand resting on Daniel's thigh. Not high, not intimate, but not innocent either. That hand had no business being there. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, my blood boiling, before I walked over. She snatched her hand back so fast, you'd think she'd touched a hot stove. "Oh, hey," she chirped, all fake smiles. Daniel looked confused, a little too confused, like maybe he really hadn't noticed. Or maybe he had, and he was pretending. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling and thought, okay, this isn't a misunderstanding anymore. This is war. The worst part wasn't just the betrayal. It was the way she tried to make me doubt myself. The little digs, the sly comments. Like when she told me, "You're so lucky Daniel's patient. Most guys would have left by now with how busy you are." Or, "You don't even know how many women check him out when you're not looking. It's kind of wild." Oh, wow. "It's kind of wild, Daniel." "Oh, wow." A head of soft face. Should laugh when she said it, like it was a joke. But it wasn't a joke. It was a wedge. And the more she chipped away, the more I started believing maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe Daniel deserved someone who sparkled like Jessica. But then one night, something snapped. We were at dinner, me, Daniel, and Jessica. And she was in rare form, laughing at every word he said, batting her lashes, sipping her wine like she was auditioning for some bad reality show. And then she leaned back in her chair, smirked, and said, "Honestly, if I'd met you first, Daniel, who knows what would have happened?" The table went silent. Daniel chuckled awkwardly, like he didn't know what to do with that. I sat there frozen, my nails digging into my palm under the table. Jessica just sipped her wine, eyes twinkling like she'd dropped a grenade and was waiting to see who'd explode. And that was the moment I knew. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't insecure. She was after my husband, and if she thought I was going to sit quietly and let her, she had another thing coming. But here's the thing about revenge. The best kind isn't loud. It isn't a screaming match in the middle of a restaurant. The best kind of revenge is patient, calculated. You wait for the right moment, and when it comes, you flip the whole damn script. And that's exactly what I was about to do. The breaking point didn't happen all at once. It never does. It was like being nibbled to death by tiny little betrayals until finally one day, you realize you're bleeding out. For weeks after that dinner where Jessica basically admitted she'd have gone after Daniel if she'd met him first, I carried this gnawing pit in my stomach. I'd go to work, put on my professional smile, lead my meetings, send my emails, but underneath I was simmering, and she kept pushing. One night she called me, voice all casual, and said, "Hey, can I borrow Daniel tomorrow? My sink is leaking and I don't know the first thing about fixing it." Borrow Daniel, like he was a wrench. I said, "Why don't you call a plumber?" She laughed. "Why waste money when you've got a husband who's basically Mr. Fix-It? Come on, it's not a big deal." But to me, it was a big deal. It was the casual way she assumed my husband's time and energy were hers to claim. I said no, and she got quiet. real quiet. Then she said, "Wow, okay, guess I know where we stand," and hung up. That was the first time I let myself imagine life without her in it. No brunches, no midnight phone calls, no best friend title, just silence. And the idea didn't scare me like I thought it would. But here's what did scare me. Daniel still hadn't seen it. Or maybe he had, and he was pretending not to. That was almost worse, because it made me feel like the crazy one, like maybe I was just jealous. The universe must have a wicked sense of humor, because right when I was reaching my limit, it handed me the exact evidence I needed. It was a Saturday night. Daniel and I were at home watching a movie, his phone charging on the coffee table. He got up to grab popcorn, and while he was gone, the screen lit up. "Jessica," the preview line glared at me. "Don't tell her, but you looked so good tonight. That shirt, wow." My throat went dry. My pulse spiked, and for a split second, I thought about not saying anything, just burying it like all the other moments. But then I remembered the way she smirked at dinner, the way she brushed his arm at the bar, the way she said if she'd met him first. And I thought, no more. When Daniel came back, I didn't throw his phone at him. I didn't scream. I just picked it up, held it out, and said, "Read it." He frowned, took the phone, and when his eyes scanned the message, I saw the blood drain from his face. He whispered, "Oh my God." I said, "Yeah, oh my God." That was the first time he really saw it. Not just the joking, not just the friendly banter, but the intention behind it. The line she'd crossed. He sat down hard, popcorn spilling everywhere, and said, "I swear, I didn't." "I know," I said. And I did. For all his faults, Daniel isn't a liar. He looked horrified, not guilty. But I also knew this wasn't going to stop unless I made it stop. That night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I realized something. Jessica thought she had the upper hand. She thought she could chip away at me, sneak her way into my marriage, and I'd stay quiet because that's what women are taught to do. Don't cause a scene. Don't ruin the friendship. Don't be the crazy, jealous wife. But what she didn't know was that I'd been collecting receipts. Every text, every comment, every little dig she thought she'd gotten away with. And I decided I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. So I made a plan. It wasn't going to be petty, like unfollowing her on Instagram or sending her a nasty text. And it wasn't going to be violent, though Lord knows the thought of throwing a drink in her face crossed my mind more than once. No, my revenge was going to be clean, surgical, and it was going to be public. Because Jessica cared about one thing more than Daniel, more than me, more than our so-called friendship: her image. She loved being the funny, charming, life of the party girl, the one everyone adored, the one people whispered about. God, I wish I had her confidence. So I was going to strip that mask right off her face. The opportunity came faster than I expected. Our friend Melissa was having a birthday dinner. Big group, nice restaurant, long table with candles and wine glasses that practically sparkled. Jessica would be there. Daniel would be there. Everyone who mattered in our little circle would be there. And that was where I decided it was going to happen. No screaming match in the corner. No dramatic storm out. Just me, standing up in front of everyone, holding up the receipts and letting Jessica's own words expose her. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every time she'd undermined me, every time she'd made me doubt myself, every time she'd crossed a line and then laughed about it. This was going to end, and it was going to end on my terms. The night of the dinner, I remember staring at myself in the mirror before we left, my hands trembling just a little. Daniel came up behind me, rested his hands on my shoulders, and said, "You don't have to do this." And I said, "Yes, I do." Because sometimes silence is the real betrayal. and I wasn't going to betray myself anymore. The restaurant smelled like garlic and wine, the kind of place where the pasta costs more than it should but tastes good enough you don't care. Melissa's birthday dinner. Long table, 20 people, candles flickering in the center like it was some kind of stage. And it was, at least for me. Jessica was already there when Daniel and I arrived. She looked radiant, of course. She always did. Perfect curls, a dress that shimmered just enough, that confident laugh that carried across the table. She spotted us and waved big, like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't the same woman who'd texted my husband about how good he looked in his shirt. I smiled back, because tonight wasn't about hiding my feelings anymore. Tonight was about letting them out. We sat down, ordered wine. The conversation flowed, laughter bouncing off the walls. I played along. I laughed when Melissa cracked a joke. I clunked glasses when someone toasted. And all the while, I could feel Jessica's eyes on me, watching, measuring. Halfway through dinner, she leaned across Daniel with that too familiar grin and said, "So, Daniel, when are you going to teach me that grill recipe? You know, the one with the honey glaze? I swear I think about it all the time. All the time." I could feel my stomach twist. But instead of snapping, I smiled sweetly and said, "Funny, Jessica, you've been thinking about my husband's meat that much." The table chuckled, a ripple of laughter, some awkward, some genuine. Jessica flushed just slightly, then laughed too, like she could play it off. But I knew that was just the warm-up. Then came the moment. Dessert plates had just been cleared. People were sipping their wine, leaning back in their chairs, relaxed. And I stood up. At first, no one noticed. Then Daniel looked up at me, confusion in his eyes. Jessica's smile froze, just for a second. I clinked my glass gently with a spoon. "Hey everyone, sorry to interrupt. I just have something I want to say." The table went quiet. Heads turned. Melissa blinked, curious. And Jessica? She was staring at me like she already knew. I took a breath. My voice was calm, steady. "Most of you know Jessica, my best friend. Or at least, that's what I thought she was." Gasps. Shifts in chairs. Jessica laughed, too loud, too forced. "Oh my God, what are you?" I held up a hand. "Don't worry, Jess. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to tell the truth." And then I pulled out my phone. The first text I read was simple. "Don't tell her, but you looked so good tonight. That shirt. Wow." The room went dead silent. I looked up. That wasn't from me. That was from Jessica. To my husband. Eyes widened. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Someone muttered, "Oh, Dan." Jessica sputtered, "That's out of context." "Oh, don't worry," I said, flipping to the next one. "You're too good to her, you know that. If I were her, I'd treat you like a king." A low murmur rippled across the table. I let it hang there for a beat. Then I said, "Now tell me, Jessica, what kind of best friend says that?" She was red now. Eyes darting, mouth opening and closing. "It was a joke. Would you—" I shook my head. "No, a joke is calling him Mr. Fix-It. A joke is laughing about his terrible dance moves. This is you crossing a line, over and over." Daniel reached for my hand under the table. His grip was firm, grounding. Jessica finally snapped, "You're humiliating me, in front of everyone." And I said, calm as ice, "No, Jessica, you humiliated yourself. I'm just holding up the mirror." The table was buzzing now. Melissa's eyes were huge. One of Daniel's co-workers muttered something like, "That's messed up." Even the waiter hovering nearby froze in place like he was watching a soap opera unfold live. Jessica pushed her chair back, but I wasn't done. "You think this is about jealousy? No, this is about respect, about boundaries. You don't flirt with someone else's husband and then smile in their face like nothing's wrong." I leaned forward, voice steady. "You don't get to play best friend and betrayer at the same time." Silence. Thick. Heavy. Everyone watching. Finally, Jessica grabbed her purse, her voice sharp. "You're crazy! This is insane! You've ruined Melissa's birthday." But Melissa spoke up, quiet, but firm. "No, Jess. You ruined it the second you decided someone else's husband was fair game." Gasps again, heads turning, and Jessica, her face crumbled just slightly, because the one thing she couldn't stand was losing the crowd. She stormed out, heels clacking, the door swinging shut behind her. I sat back down. My hands were trembling, but my chest felt lighter than it had in months. Daniel squeezed my hand, leaned in, whispered, "You were incredible." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. The table slowly came back to life, people whispering, glancing at me, some nodding, some even giving little smiles like, "Good for you." It wasn't perfect. It wasn't neat. But it was real, and it was mine. And Jessica? She'd finally been exposed for exactly who she was. The night after that dinner, I couldn't sleep. Not because I regretted it, not because I replayed the confrontation in my head and thought, maybe I went too far. No. I couldn't sleep, because for the first time in months, my mind was quiet. I lay there in the dark, Daniel's arm draped across me, his breathing steady, and I realized something. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop anymore. I'd already dropped it. Jessica's mask was off. And once people see who you really are, you can't put it back on. The fallout started the very next morning. 32 missed calls, 15 texts, a handful of voicemails I didn't bother to listen to. Jessica had gone into damage control mode. The texts ranged from furious, "How dare you embarrass me like that? You ruined everything," to pitiful, "I'm so sorry, I didn't mean it. Please don't end our friendship." I didn't answer a single one. Daniel did though, just one. He texted her, "Don't contact us again." By noon, the group chat was buzzing. Screenshots of what happened, retellings of the dinner from people who'd been there. Some folks said I'd gone nuclear. Others said, "Finally someone said it out loud." And here's the thing. Every time someone tried to defend her, someone else pushed back. "Oh, it was just flirting." "No, it was disrespect. She didn't mean anything by it." "Yeah, then why was she texting him behind his wife's back?" For once, I didn't feel like the crazy jealous wife. For once, the truth was louder than her charm. A couple days later, Melissa called me. I almost didn't answer, afraid it was going to be another scolding about ruining the birthday. But instead she said, "I just wanted to say, thank you." I blinked. For what? For standing up to her. You weren't the only one she crossed. She's been making little digs at me for years, acting like she's better. I never had the guts to say anything. I sank into the couch, relief flooding me. Because it wasn't just me. It was never just me. That was the theme in the weeks that followed. Quiet confessions. Daniel's cousin texted, "She hit on my boyfriend once at a barbecue." One of my coworkers admitted, "She DM'd my husband last year. I thought I was crazy for being suspicious." Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. Jessica wasn't a one-time slip-up. She was a pattern, a storm that blew through people's lives, charming and flattering and smiling while she chipped away at boundaries. And me? I'd been the first to stop pretending. Of course, not everyone saw it that way. Daniel's mom called me, voice tight, saying, "Did you really have to air dirty laundry in public? Couldn't you have handled that privately?" I took a deep breath and said, "She made it public the second she involved my husband. I just made sure the truth matched the spotlight." Jessica, meanwhile, went quiet. No more texts. No calls. Her Instagram suddenly shifted. No more party pics. No more group selfies. just cryptic quotes about betrayal and fake friends. I didn't comment. I didn't stalk. I didn't care. Because here's the thing. Silence is its own revenge. But the real change happened at home. Daniel saw me differently. I don't mean in a romantic way, though there was that too. I mean in the way he listened, in the way he stopped brushing off my instincts. One night, a couple weeks later, he pulled me close and said, "I should have believed you sooner. I saw it. I just didn't want to admit it." And I said, "I know. Because part of marriage isn't being perfect. It's learning when to finally stand shoulder to shoulder." We still saw some of the same circle, Melissa, a few others, but the energy shifted. People stopped giving Jessica the benefit of the doubt. They stopped brushing off her digs as just jokes, and slowly, she faded. Not because I pushed her out, but because once you've been unmasked, it's hard to keep the spotlight. The final straw came months later, a wedding. One of Daniel's college friends. Jessica showed up. Yes, she was invited, because not everyone had written her off yet. She walked in, smiling that same old smile. But it didn't land the same way. People shifted away from her. Conversations dimmed when she approached. Nobody wanted to stand too close. And me? I stood in the corner with Daniel, watching her try to charm the crowd, watching her fail. At one point, she caught my eye. For a split second, I thought she'd come over, apologize, beg, something. But instead, she looked away. And in that moment, I realized the truth. She wasn't my problem anymore. That night, back at home, I pulled out my journal and wrote down one sentence. The best revenge isn't anger. It's freedom, and I believed it. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't waiting for the next betrayal. I wasn't shrinking myself to make her comfortable. I was free. And maybe some people will say I went too far, that standing up in a restaurant and reading her texts out loud was dramatic, that I could have just ghosted her quietly. But to those people I say this, drama wasn't my choice. Betrayal was hers. All I did was stop pretending it didn't happen. And the truth? It felt better than any apology ever could. It's been a while since that night. Long enough for the shock to fade, long enough for the whispers to quiet down, long enough for me to look back and really see it for what it was. And do you know what I see? Not just betrayal, not just drama, not just a broken friendship lying in pieces on the floor. I see a woman, me, finally standing up for herself, finally saying out loud the things she had swallowed for too long. Because the truth is, Jessica didn't just cross the line once. She'd been testing my boundaries for years. Tiny digs about my clothes, subtle comparisons, flirty jokes with Daniel that I laughed off, even though they twisted something in my stomach. Every time, I told myself, don't make a big deal, don't be dramatic, keep the peace. But peace at what cost? Peace for her, while I chipped away at myself. That's not peace, that's surrender. And I didn't realize how much I'd surrendered until the night I stood up in that restaurant. Do you know what freedom tastes like? It's not champagne bubbles or birthday cake frosting. It's truth, spoken, raw, loud. When I read those texts out loud, when I looked her in the eye and said, "You don't get to play best friend and betrayer at the same time," I wasn't just calling her out, I was calling myself back. And it changed everything. Not just between me and Jessica, between me and Daniel, between me and myself. Daniel looks at me differently now. He knows I won't shrink to keep the peace. He knows my instincts matter. He knows I'll fight for us and for me. And let me tell you, when your partner finally sees your fire instead of just your patience, it changes the air between you. As for Jessica, she faded. Not because I screamed louder, not because I chased her out, but because once the mask is off, people can't unsee what's underneath. The funny thing is, I thought exposing her would make me feel heavy, like I'd unleashed something messy that would stick to me forever. But instead, it was light. It was clean. It was like finally opening the windows in a house that had been shut up for too long. And once the fresh air came in, I knew I'd never live with that stale, suffocating silence again. But here's the part that surprised me most. Other women, his cousins, even an old co-worker, started whispering their own stories. She flirted with my boyfriend once. She DM'd my husband too. She made me feel small for years. It wasn't just me. It was never just me. And that's the thing about women like Jessica. They thrive in silence, in secrecy, in the shadows where we're too embarrassed, too scared, too polite to say, this is wrong. The second someone breaks that silence, the spell is broken. So when people ask me now, do you regret it, standing up like that, making a scene, I smile, and I say, no, because sometimes the only way to cut through years of manipulation is to shine a spotlight so bright that even the shadows can't hide. I still think about that night sometimes, the clink of my spoon against the glass, the hush that fell over the table, the look on her face when the words left my mouth. And I don't replay it with regret. I replay it like a movie I never get tired of watching, the moment the heroine finally stops running and turns around to face the villain head-on. Because that night, I was the heroine of my own story. And maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've had a friend who smiled in your face while eyeing what was yours. Maybe you've felt that gut twist that whispers, this isn't right, but you swallowed it because you didn't want to make waves. If that's you, let me tell you something. You're not crazy, you're not paranoid, and you're not alone. And if you decide to stand up, to speak out, to flip the script, don't let anyone tell you that you're dramatic. Truth isn't drama, it's clarity. So here I am, months later. My circle is smaller, tighter, cleaner. My marriage is stronger. My voice is louder. And Jessica, she's just a shadow of a chapter I already closed. And maybe one day she'll tell the story differently. Maybe she'll say I was cruel, that I humiliated her, that I was jealous. Maybe she already is. But her version doesn't matter, because I lived it. And so did everyone at that table. They saw her mask crack. They saw my voice rise. They saw the truth. And once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. So tell me, what do you think? Did I go too far, standing up in that restaurant, reading her texts out loud, stripping her mask in front of everyone? Or did I not go nearly far enough,